In this segment, we welcome Dario Forte, founder and chief executive officer at DFLabs. We discuss the SOAR market, its maturity, and why an easy-to-integrate platform is key. To learn more about DFLabs, please visit www.dflabs.com/Security Weekly. In the leadership and communications segment, why the tech industry needs a moral compass. 9 out of 10 people are willing to make less money to do more meaningful work. Distill your message to 15 words and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/BSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Rapid7 powers the practice of SecOps. Using shared data, analytics, and automated workflows, SecOps unites IT, DevOps, and security teams to make security an outcome of innovation. Rapid7 combines technology, expertise, and advocacy to drive vulnerability management, application security, incident detection, and log management for more than 7,000 organizations worldwide. Power up your SecOps practice with a free trial at rapid7.com/Security Weekly. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 106, recorded November 12th, 2018. We are observing Veterans Day today. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado with about 6 inches of snow, joined by my co-host, Paul Asadorian in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's good to be here. It's nice to, I got in the office a little late, but good to be here recording shows. And nice that we didn't talk about it, but we have matching goatees, which I think is nice. I don't know what prompted that, but I don't know. It's like a thing. We'll see how it goes. I think
it's No Shave November.
No Shave November. Actually, that is what prompted it, yes.
Yes, so. I think so. All right. If you're interested in quality over quantity and having meaningful conversations instead of just a badge scan, join us April 1st to 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort at InfoSec World 2019, where you can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Use the registration code OS19-SecWeek for 15% off the main conference or World Pass. All right. I want to welcome our guest today. Dario Forte is the founder and chief executive officer at DFLabs. Dario has over 20 years of experience in incident response and cyber investigations and started his career as a member of the Italian police, where he worked closely with well-known U.S. government agencies such as NASA. He is one of the co-editors of 3 ISO standards. Dario, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
It's a pleasure for me to be here.
So I love Italy, and I know you're in Italy now. Mm-hmm. So I'm jealous, actually.
Oh yeah, you should. And, we don't have snow now, but it's a very pleasant autumn. So it's one of the rare moments I'm in my house. So it's a very pleasant night.
Very good. So let's start a little bit with your background. You've done some work for police forces, incident response, written some ISO standards. Kind of give us a little bit of your career, your journey to where you are today at DFLabs.
Yeah, I started in the police, and it was a pretty interesting thing. My first activity was in the drug enforcement unit. I spent almost 7 years over there, traveling all over the world, and I spent also 1 year of my career in that period in South America, as I speak Spanish. And then I moved into organized crime unit. And in the last 5 years of my career before leaving the agency in 2003, I was responsible for the high-tech crime unit, which was also responsible for lawful interception and hacking and cyber terrorism case. Then I left the agency, and then I changed the career for a period, I will say a long period. I was adjunct professor at the University of Milano in the incident response and forensic field. And I also started to started the business initially as a consultant, and then we pivoted the company in 2012 from pure service shop into case management for incident response, and then into SOAR. So it's a pretty fluid career of the last 20 years. And as you said, I'm also still working with the ISO 3 standards of the SC27 family already released, and a new one is going to come out in January next year.
You know how small this field is? I want to say it was 2003, I sent a PGP encrypted email to criminal investigators in Milan because there was a systems administrator, it turned out, that was like leading this crime ring that had broken into some systems at the university I was working for. And I had grabbed like all of their usernames and passwords to all of their FTP sites that had all of their tools. And I sent it in collaboration with Secret Service and an criminal investigation team in Milan. And the person was actually prosecuted. And I actually presented on that when I worked at the university. So you
Interesting.
could have been involved in that case at the time.
We work with the Secret Service a lot, so I know the dynamics. So it was interesting. Yes, and at that time, it was a little bit earlier, but you guys remember Dave Dietrich from University of Washington. Yeah, we were working with him at that time. It was pretty interesting kind of cases. Yes.
Awesome.
So DFLabs kind of migrated then from more of consultancy into product. So what was some of the inspiration behind what you're doing at DFLabs now? What was that market or technology problem you were trying to solve?
Well, the main, the haha moment was when we heard a number of CISOs blaming the vendor world because nobody was proposing or building a platform able to help them to have cyber incidents under control, which was, by the way, one of our major motto. And so we intercepted, at that time, it was mostly on the case management and the enhanced investigative support, mostly for chain of custody and so forth. And I remember that we intercepted that. It was between 2010 and 2012. So we created the first automated case management for incident response. But then, and by the way, at that time, we were also presenting it at the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, because it was the period when the RFC 5070, the IODEF, came out. And it was one of the first actual real-world implementation of the 5070. In that case, it was the first version of the product. But then we understood that sooner or later, the market is going to look for full automation, not only of the human-centric process, but also of the machine process. So we introduced the new version of the product that's still called Inkman, but at that time it was Inkman NG, where basically we introduced the concept of playbooks, where basically we had a series of, at that time, sequential actions that people had to follow in order to conduct RFC and standard like kind of activity. Then we evolved into pure machine-to-machine. So we evolved into the concept of runbooks, where basically now there are automated workflow that can put in touch machine and other machines, where humans may or may not have the central, let's say, authorization point, but we're basically the full automation technology. And this is something that probably pioneered the market, because we saw time after time, year after year, that the need for automation was growing. And now I will say that is one of the priorities for all the CISOs.
Yeah, and in 2014, when I went to Tenable, this was one of the items we talked about. And Gartner was still kind of defining what security orchestration automation meant. They were asking a lot of questions back then about, would you automate certain workflows and et cetera? And I was like, absolutely. I mean, I think it's the only way we can continue to evolve security and responding to security events. There's not enough humans out there to do all this manually. So you saw that even a little earlier than that with what you were doing at DFLabs then. So kind of talk me through how customers would typically engage then down this process of automation, because I think we're still in the early days of automating some of these tasks.
Yeah, there is first of all, if you allow me to say, there is an anecdote about Gartner. It was 2012 probably, and we briefed one of the major analysts of Gartner, which now is doing something else over there. But we asked them at the end of the presentation what it was a gentleman, was thinking about automating and making some preliminary automation, as you said, on the incident response process. And the answer was, no, it's a too narrow sector. Don't waste your time. Nobody's going to do it. It was 2012. And after 1 week, we got our first purchase order from a big corporation in the US that wanted us to run a preliminary automation on their SOC. Gartner came a little bit into the game a little bit later on. So as you said, in 2014, when Anton Chvakin and other analysts were aware of the topic. Getting back to your question, there are two types of companies that at the moment are approaching automation: the less sophisticated, or probably the most cautious and conservative, and the more aggressive. The first one, that may be also even big corporation, they prefer to approach automation through let's say a gradual, a progressive journey. So they ask to first of all automate instructions, mostly for the level 1 analysts, and then they can measure the return on the investment in a series of parameters that I will be happy eventually to discuss later on. But then when they understand that the maturity curve has been reached, then they push very quickly into the full automation, where the machine are automated instead of the human tasks. The second category are usually companies that don't have that legacy need, so they can be directly aggressive on towards the full automation. And these kind of people usually are, they have very clear idea of what they want to automate. They usually come out with RFP or requirements that are more direct and more, let's say, less vague and generic. And those usually are the companies that give you, listen to you, let's say, better compared with the first. We have a different approach because we have the playbooks that can match the first category, but also the run book that are actually mostly towards the automation. So it really depends from the type of maturity curve. But the interesting thing is that the size of the company doesn't matter. There are big companies that are still early stage, and that actually matches what you just said, Matt. But there are even smaller companies that are very aggressive and they want to automate. And the interesting thing is that there is also a growing number of MSSPs that are looking at this for series of reasons, especially C-level are interested in a series of KPI that they understand they can reach only, maintain only with automation.
Dario, it's interesting, as Matt and I and all the hosts here track the market. We saw that early adoption and talk of automation, and as we've progressed, there's a lot of people that are early adopters and a lot of people that are like, oh my God, automation scares me. I've been burned by that before. To today, where now you see all of these vendors in various categories going, oh, we have orchestration and automation and response in our products, and we just built it in. Well, what are some things that go into the decision between using more of a dedicated solution, such as yours in incident response and forensics, and saying, oh, I'm going to use what comes from my SIM provider or my threat intelligence provider? What are some of those differentiators and things that go into those decisions on which platform to start using?
Well, we cover the entire spectrum. So we are absolutely not just leaning towards incident response and forensics, but for example, we handle the threat intelligence integration, the containment, and also the reporting. Our experience is that customers are less interested in having a feature from their current providers. For example, they may have some proposal from the phishing vendor or the GRC vendor or the TI vendor that claim to have a SOAR, but then they understand that they just can get some playbook out of it, but they don't have the global picture. When they talk to us instead, they realize that they can get a platform. The platform approach is currently the most preferred by customers, and I would say also by investors. Investors prefer not to invest in a feature kind of startup or company. They prefer to have a company that is able to cover the entire spectrum. We mentioned Gartner before. Gartner presented an interesting paper on SOAR some months ago, and they have three categories. One is the SOA, the security automation and orchestration, straight and purely that. The second is the SERP, which is mostly the case management, and the third one is the TIP, which is playbooks and runbooks built upon threat intelligence. Those are, if you take those singularly, those are features. So market is instead moving towards the platform, which is where actually we are trying to position ourselves, which is mostly a platform that is able to cover the entire spectrum. This is where the customers are currently looking for. And you have proof of this when you read through the RFP and also when you speak with CISO about the type of value that they are looking for.
That's one of the concerns I've had with the analysts. They kind of take a market and try to break it up into different parts. But when you do that, you create a new kind of category that sits on top to actually bring the three back together. So why break it up in the first place? Has always been an interesting one for me, right? Is if you can address all the use cases here, why do I have to create three separate submarkets for them? Why not just go after orchestration automation as a whole across the entire spectrum? So always interesting.
I have an idea of this. The reason is that vertical vendors, they need to innovate and they need to keep pace with platform vendors. So they are creating their micro feature capability within their value proposition in order to keep pace with what the platform vendor are doing. But if you look at the RFP and the customer interaction, number of vertical vendors that are able to sell their automation, or let's say respectfully, their SOAR component is absolutely little compared with the platform vendors. And because at the end of the day, the platform vendors that compete on RFP are usually the 5 to the 7 vendors. So, and we don't usually cross feature type of products.
Dario, I think that's fantastic insights, and I'll back that up. When I worked for the university, as an example, I would find new platforms, and I'm like, we could benefit from this. And typically the first response, as you know, I worked in the network engineering group because back then there wasn't a separate security group, right? The network engineering group would be great. You know, like we've got a vendor, whether that be Cisco or Juniper or whoever it was, that, oh, they have those features, so you don't need to go buy that whole new thing. And then we'd try that feature and we'd realize that there's limitations. And I think so many of us that work in security have run up against that, where you try and use some of these extra features that are built on, and you very quickly find that they don't meet all of your requirements and that you're better off finding a dedicated platform to integrate that for something as critical, I think, as SOAR has become today.
Yes, and again, you have proof of this when you speak to CISO and when they shortlist vendors for their for their RFP and their procurement process in general, usually the requirements that are set up by the CISOs and the technical people into the RFP are automatically excluding vertical vendors from that kind of selection.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Matt and I saw that in vulnerability management. They would just give away a vulnerability scanner as part of another, product, and it's not even close to what you have, right? Awesome, Matt.
Exactly.
Sorry, more questions?
Yeah. So when we think about a platform vendor, there are things that covering the broad use cases. I think you had a press release last week on the open integration framework, right? Talk a little bit about what the open integration framework allows people to do when it comes to DFLabs and the platform and addressing SOAR.
We discovered in the past 12 months that one of the most recurring questions from the CISO that we speak with is how much we will be depending from you if we want to build integration with new tools or with part of the existing ecosystem that is not part of our procurement at the moment. And we understood that we may make the difference if we will allowing people to create their own integration without being, allow me to say, slave of the vendor. Because before vendors were the checkpoint in case a new integration was needed, and there are still SOAR vendors that are charging companies for each integration that they are required to do. We have a different approach. We said, why don't we create an open platform where basically everybody that can write their own integration without needing DFLabs. Let's put it in an open way. Let's put it part of let's say, free module for existing customer and part of a community edition that, by the way, we are launching very soon. So everybody will get access to it without becoming slave of DFLabs. And the interesting thing is that another thing that we discovered is that the number of CISOs that have SOC people that are skilled on scripting languages is very little. So another problem that we tried to solve is that how we can make this integration framework easy and not only open. So we created a meta layer where basically everybody can write integration in a very simple way, in a very granular way, with a very almost no need of scripting language knowledge. That is disruptive from my standpoint because for two reasons. First, again, customer can directly touch the openness and the flexibility of the architecture. By the way, our SOAR use cases are not limited to pure cyber incidents. We have banks that are using it not only for cyber, but also for cyber frauds, integrating it with mainframes, for example, or ATM fraud, or even physical security kind of things. And the second one is that partners are able to build their own integration without needing DFLabs that time to time may be a bottleneck. We are just 52 people at the moment. So partners now, the channel partners can build their own integration. They can create their additional revenue stream, and the software and the sales can scale. So both technical value and business reasons.
That's so important in today's market as well, because the people, like myself and others that have been working in security for some time, there's only so many people like that. And there's only so many experts or senior security people at many organizations. And what we need as sort of the senior level people is to be able to enable our SOC and enable our help desk and other areas, to be able to build integrations, to be able to respond to incidents without requiring us our time in every single case. And so what you just described is absolutely so important for the market today, because there are only so many people with those skills that can actually write integrations. And by enabling it to give to your lower level analyst, you can be more effective and get a better return on your investment in a product.
Yeah, I can give you an anecdote on this, if I may. the average time for DFLabs to building a full integration, for us, a full integration is bidirectional. So we don't put a logo on the website just because we have one API call and we call it integration. For us, it's a very rigorous way to do integration. It must be directional and so forth. So before the framework, it took 7 to 10 days to build it. Now I was speaking with my CTO today, and he told me about a pretty complex integration that we did with a major vendor that we are going to announce in a couple of weeks, and it took 9 hours. So I asked my CTO if he first of all if he was joking with me. That may happen time to time, and second, I was asking him if the integration was full, and he said yes. We took 9 hours just to do the full bidirectional one. So even in terms of time to execution is going to be disruptive, because as you said, Paul, if you have an incident and you don't have the integration available in a particular moment during your incident, you cannot open a change ticket or involve your vendor with the procurement just because you need to spend X amount of money to have another integration. You need to be quick. And if you can integrate an external tool quickly, even an external tool that is part of a professional service company ecosystem, you can better react to incident. This is my opinion.
No, it's awesome.
And plus, you're building out a community of these integration points now. That helps everybody, all your customers, because it now gives you a starting point for this broad set of integrations. But now you can also maybe do some customizations and tweaks that are specific to the way you want to integrate with those tools, which would just continue to speed up the ability to leverage a platform like this.
Correct. And we, in the plan, we also have a relationship with universities and also part of the government. So the community edition will be open to qualified personnel. And we think that giving them the opportunity to learn and again contribute and also exchange pieces of the integration or full integration or even runbooks between constituencies will be also an important part for the future development of concurrent IR, which is probably one of the trends in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I also think that's important for the market too. I think it's going to become easier over time to swap out various components of technology that represents your security architecture. And so you're going to need that ease of integration into your SOAR platform.
Correct. And again, you can decide to build a full set, or you can decide to build just one action that is necessary for a particular runbook. And for example, we made an experiment. Just one action takes probably 5 to 10 minutes. So that is really changing the way SOAR is going to help to reduce the reaction time.
Awesome.
That's great. Paul, any other questions?
I'm good. I just want to remind our listeners that they can visit dflabs.com/security weekly. You can register for a demo right in there and see some of the other content that we've created alongside DFLabs. John Moore, in particular, has made several appearances. He's shown how the Inkman product works, in addition to some open source tools as well. And all of that material, including a link to registering, get more information, is at dflabs.com/security weekly. Yes, and John Moore will be on Thursday as well for another technical segment.
We get a double header this week at DFLabs.
Just if I may add just a little note, we also have a calculator available where basically customers and prospects can measure and compare the manual approach to incident versus the automated approach to the same kind of incident, plus additional calculations that CISOs can see in terms of cost reductions and exposure reduction, depending from the type of incident. And that is available for free in case of contact.
And I love that too, because our audience has to act as salespeople to go to their senior management and say, we need this tool, and arming them with the evaluation and the numbers is certainly extremely helpful in that case.
Yes,
definitely. Dario, thank you for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it has been a pleasure for me.
Thanks, Dario.
All right. We'll take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.